I worked as a forest ranger in a remote part of Wyoming. The section I covered was mostly empty land, thick pine trees, long dirt trails, old fire roads that no one used anymore. People said the forest was peaceful, but after enough years alone in the dark, you start to learn that the woods are never really empty. Something is always awake. Something is always listening. I learned that the hard way. One night, I was assigned to check an old cabin deep in the northern sector. It was a structure we rarely visited. It had no power and no radio connection. It was only used for emergency shelter. I was supposed to make sure the roof had not collapsed after a recent storm. Simple task. In and out. I parked the truck at the end of the trail and started walking. The night was quiet. Too quiet. No wind, no insects, not even the distant cry of coyotes. It felt like the forest was waiting for something. As I got closer to the cabin, I noticed the door was slightly open. That was strange. The lock should have been sealed. I walked slowly, flashlight up, hand near my radio. When I reached the door, I pushed it gently. It creaked. The inside smelled like old wood and dust. Everything looked normal. A table, a broken lantern, a bunk bed against the wall. But something felt off. The silence was heavy. It pressed on my chest. I stepped inside to take a photo for my report. That was when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy. One step, then another. I turned around fast. No one was there. The door was still open. Outside was pitch black. I called out. I asked if someone was out there. No answer. I waited a moment. Then the footsteps started again. Same pace, same weight. But this time, they came from the side of the cabin, from the shadows. I leaned forward and pointed my flashlight out the window. Nothing. Just trees. Then a voice spoke. It said my name. Quiet, calm, very close. I jerked back. My heart hit my ribs. I looked out again. Still nothing. The voice came once more. Same tone, same slow pace. It sounded like a coworker. But the closest ranger station was 20 miles away. No one should have been near me. I stepped away from the window and grabbed my radio. I called dispatch. Static. I tried again. More static. Then a faint whisper drifted through the speaker. Not from dispatch. Not from any channel I knew. It whispered my name the same way the voice outside did. I dropped the radio. It hit the floor with a loud crack. The whisper continued even after it landed. I backed up slowly until my shoulders touched the wall. The cabin felt smaller, like the air was closing in. The footsteps started again, this time right outside the door. They stopped. A shadow moved in front of the opening. I could see its shape. Tall. Too tall. Shoulders too narrow. Arms too long. The head tilted at a strange angle, as if trying to listen through the wood. I kept still. My flashlight shook in my hand. The creature moved its hand into view. The fingers were long, thin, almost bony. Its nails scraped lightly on the edge of the door. It tapped once, then twice, then 3 times. Slow and steady, as if asking to be let in. The voice spoke again, same calm tone. It said, "Open the door for me." I said nothing. My throat felt locked. The creature shifted. Its shadow stretched across the floor. It leaned closer. The voice changed. It copied my voice perfectly. It said, "Open the door." It said it the same way I speak into the radio, the same cadence, the same breath. Hearing my own voice outside the cabin made my skin crawl. I stepped backward until I hit the bunk bed. The creature nudged the door, not enough to open it, just enough to test it. The wood bent with a soft crack. I reached for my sidearm. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold it. I aimed at the gap. The tapping stopped. Silence returned. My breathing echoed inside my head. Then I heard something above me, on the roof. Slow crawling, nails dragging across the shingles. The creature had climbed the cabin. I aimed the flashlight at the ceiling. Dust fell from the boards. The thing moved from one side of the roof to the other. Then it stopped right above me. I held my breath. The roof groaned, as if something very heavy was crouching on top of it. The voice came again, this time right through the ceiling. It whispered my name with a long, soft breath. I felt the hair on my neck rise. I unlocked the door and ran. I did not think. I just moved. I sprinted down the trail toward the truck. Branches snapped behind me. Something was chasing me. Fast. Too fast. The footsteps were no longer slow. They were sharp, jagged, like bones hitting the dirt. I reached the truck and slammed the door. I started the engine with shaking hands. The headlights lit up the trail behind me. I saw the creature for a full second. Tall, pale, bent in the wrong places. Its eyes reflected the light like a wild animal, but the rest of it looked almost human. Almost. Its mouth opened slowly, too wide, as if the skin was stretching. I floored the gas and tore down the dirt road. I did not look back again. I did not want to see if it followed. When I reached the main station, I reported everything. They told me it was exhaustion. They told me stress can distort reality. They told me I needed rest. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know the woods were not empty that night. I quit 2 weeks later. Sometimes, late at night, my old work radio turns on by itself, and I hear a faint whisper. It says my name. Slow, calm, patient. The same way it did near the cabin. The same way it did from the roof. I keep the radio in a drawer now. I do not touch it. But sometimes I hear it anyway, and I know it remembers me. I worked as a forest warden for 8 years in a remote district where the pines grow in thick carpets that swallow the wind. The locals called the region Silent Range because the air felt heavy even at noon. Birds sang in other forests, but not here. My cabin sat near a fire road that barely existed. Each morning I patrolled alone with a radio that crackled without warning. Most of the time it was peaceful. I tracked poachers, cleared debris, and watched for wildfires. That changed in the autumn of my 4th year. A hunter went missing near the northern basin, and something about the case never settled in my head. His name was Liam. He was 50, experienced. He told his wife he would be back by dusk. He never returned. A search team found his camp still warm. His rifle lay on the ground. No signs of struggle, no prints except his own boots. It felt staged. The forest hid him without effort. The captain told me to check the basin after the volunteers left. I accepted. I felt responsible. People trusted me to know that land. That night, I reached the basin and found the trees shifting in a strange pattern. They leaned as if watching me. The air smelled metallic. I carried a lantern and walked deeper. The beam showed claw marks on the trunks, lined in perfect vertical rows. Each mark was smooth as glass, too clean. No animal I knew could carve that. Not even bears. Suddenly, the radio hissed. A voice whispered my name twice. It sounded like Liam, but dragged out like he struggled to breathe. I froze. The radio hissed again. I tried to answer, but only static answered back. I followed the slope toward the source. The whisper had come from the east side. The slope ended in a ravine filled with pale mist that hovered above the ground. I stepped inside. Something clicked beneath my boot. It was a piece of metal. I bent down and found a bullet casing smashed flat. It belonged to Liam's rifle. My lantern flickered. I lifted it and saw shapes in the mist. Several dark silhouettes stood motionless. They were human-sized but too narrow. Their shoulders sloped inward. Their heads seemed stretched. I could not see faces. My instincts told me to back away. When I did, the silhouettes tilted as if listening. Then one stepped forward without sound. Its foot did not disturb the mist. It simply slid. I raised the radio again and spoke in a whisper. The silhouettes did not move. The lantern dimmed to a dull glow. The closest shape lifted an arm with slow and deliberate motion, like something learning how to use a body. My chest tightened. I turned and climbed the slope. I did not run. Running would break my balance. I reached the trail and finally broke into a sprint. The forest did not echo. My breath felt swallowed by the trees. When I looked back, I saw nothing behind me, yet I sensed pursuit. That night, I returned to the cabin and locked the door. The radio remained silent. I could not sleep. At 2 a.m, someone knocked on the wall. Not the door, the wall. 3 soft taps spaced evenly. I approached with my flashlight. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. When I stepped back, the tapping came again, this time 5 taps, then 2, then 5 again. Like a code, I forced myself to speak. I said my name. The tapping stopped. I waited until sunrise and reported everything. No one believed me. The captain blamed exhaustion. He ordered a new sweep of the basin that afternoon. I joined another ranger named Thon. We walked in quiet steps. He joked to ease tension, but his voice shook. As we neared the ravine, he frowned. He said he felt watched. I told him not to say that. We reached the mist. It was gone. The ravine looked normal. Fallen branches, dry leaves, a few rocks, no silhouettes, no strange marks. Than returned to the trail to log coordinates. I followed behind him, but then the air shifted. A low rasp rose near my ear. It said his name, not mine, his. I spun around and saw no one. Thon asked what was wrong, but before I could reply, the rasp repeated his name louder from the direction we came. He went pale. He asked me if it was a joke. I told him to stay close. We walked toward the road, but the sound followed. It never changed pitch. It never hesitated. It called his name again and again, with identical tone, like a recording. The trees ahead bent in a subtle arc. We stepped under them and felt the air thicken. My flashlight turned itself on, even though it had been off. Its beam pointed at a trunk where fresh marks appeared. They matched the lines I saw earlier. Thon whispered that the bark looked peeled, not scratched. Something had removed layers cleanly. I told him not to touch it. Behind us, the rasp changed. Now it said my name. We hurried. The path looped in ways I did not recognize. Roots rose where none existed before. The forest shifted like a slow river. After an hour, we reached the road. It looked normal, but the silence felt unnatural. No wind, no insects. Our radio called for us, but the signal sounded muffled. We answered, no reply. Suddenly, Thon gripped my arm. Ahead of us stood a figure. It looked like a man, but impossibly thin. Its clothes blended with the bark patterns around it. It tilted its head. The angle went too far. Something cracked softly, like a twig bending. Then its arms lengthened. I blinked, and the figure vanished. We did not speak. We ran to the truck. When we reached the station, we found the captain waiting. He looked angry at first, but then he stared at us. He asked why we were covered in dust, why our radios were off, why our log showed a 3-hour gap. We told him everything. He seemed conflicted. Then he said something odd. He said Liam's wife reported hearing knocks on her windows the night her husband vanished. Always 3 taps, then 5, then 2. She thought it was an animal. She was wrong. The captain insisted on another patrol, but he split us apart. I returned to my cabin alone. That night the knocking came again, this time on the roof. A slow dragging sound followed by a thump. I raised my flashlight and aimed it at the ceiling. Dust fell. Something heavy shifted overhead. I grabbed my rifle and stepped outside. The forest stood still. The moon burned white. My roof creaked as if a weight moved along the ridge. I aimed the beam at the edge and saw fingertips curling over the wood. They were too long and too thin. They moved in a slow dance. When the full hand appeared, it scraped the wood without making a sound. Then the hand retreated. I backed away until I reached the fire road. I watched the roof. When nothing appeared, I stepped forward. The moment I approached the cabin, a face peeked over the ridge. It was stretched and without features, a smooth surface like pale bark. It tilted toward me. I raised the rifle. Before I could shoot, the figure slid out of sight as if pulled backward by invisible threads. I ran to the station and demanded evacuation. They refused. They said I was sleep-deprived. They told me to take 2 days off at home in town. I agreed. I left the cabin before dawn and walked toward the main road. Halfway down the forest path, I heard footsteps behind me. Not animal, human. Slow, matching my pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I walked again. They followed. I turned and saw no one. My breath felt like ice. I reached the clearing and looked back one last time. The trees shifted. A tall shape stood at the edge. It held something. A hat. Liam's hat. The shape lifted it and placed it on its head with careful precision. Then it moved in a strange, staggered gait like a puppet learning to walk. I ran to the road and did not stop until I saw the town buildings. For the next week I tried to forget. I stayed indoors. At night I heard echoes of forest silence in my ears. On the 8th day I received a call. Another hiker vanished in silent range. The search team found no traces, not even prints. The captain begged me to return. I refused. I hung up. The knocks came that evening on my apartment wall. 3 taps, then 5, then 2. I moved to another town. The knocks followed. I moved again. They still followed. Now I write this from a place far away from silent range, yet I know the forest remembers me. I feel watched at night. I hear my name whispered in the same rasp that mimicked Liam. Sometimes I see a thin shadow near the door. It stands still and waits. I think the forest learned my shape. I think it wants me back. I do not sleep until dawn because the knocks grow louder before sunrise. If you ever walk near a quiet forest and find claw marks too clean to be natural, turn back. If you hear your name in a voice that sounds familiar but not alive, run without looking. And if something knocks on your wall with even rhythm, do not answer. It might be trying to learn how to speak through you.